So what if I told you there is a game that is over 20 years old and is finally coming to the Nintendo Switch in just a couple days? Probably wouldn't be that interested, right? What if I told you that this game was incredibly popular in Japan and was never released in the West? Now you're a little bit more interested, aren't you? Well, what if I actually tell you that this is actually the sequel and part 3, but if you wanted to play the first game in the series or you actually wanted to play some of the spin-offs, that's also available to you. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about Rhapsody Marl Kingdom Chronicles, which will be releasing on the 29th of August 2023. So this collection will have 2 games, Rhapsody 2, The Ballad of the Little Princess, and Rhapsody 3, Memories of the Marl Kingdom. And for those that want to start at the beginning, there's actually another collection that was released earlier in, I believe this year, might have been late last year, but NIS America had another collection with the first game in that series and with a tactics like spin-off game, which was really fun. I actually really enjoyed the tactics game. So let's take a look at Rhapsody 2 and Rhapsody 3 and see how good they are, how well they perform, and if they're worth your money. But first, I want to ask all of you guys to please hit that like and subscribe button. It means a lot. I hate doing this, but it's part of the YouTube shtick, and it's a never-ending void that I'll constantly be trying to ask you to fill with your subscriptions, likes, and validation. Anyway, enough of that stuff. Let's look at Rhapsody 2, Rhapsody 3, and just kind of talk about them. So we go into Rhapsody 2, the Ballad of the Little Princess, and realize that this sort of follows the same formula as the first game in the series. You see, in this one, you play as Cornet's daughter, a princess, obviously, as Cornet was the one we played in the first game, and her dream was to find her Prince Charming and become a queen, and spoiler alert, that happened. And in Rhapsody 2, we play as her daughter, the princess, who basically has the same dream. She wants to leave her kind of stuffy castle life, go out on adventures, but while on adventures, find her Prince Charming. Now, it is flimsy and kind of, too cutesy as a story goes. These games actually evolve into something much bigger, and in some ways kind of even call itself out on having this rather childish premise of finding love and that being your main dream. Although as the game starts, you play as Kururu, the princess, or Cornet's daughter, and you're escaping out of your castle all the time. You're kind of a selfish little brat, so you'll get into situations that are kind of sticky, yet still lighthearted, but you do have your puppets, which kind of work like accessories that give you a wide range of different spells and abilities. I'll get into them later on. Then you have your bodyguard, Randy, and also, most importantly, you have your best friend, Kriya. Most of these adventures start the same way. You escape from the castle, and you go on kind of a cutesy little adventure, put it that way. There's never anything that's too over the top or anything that's too dark, but what you don't realize is through these short little chapters or acts, you're also seeing her grow, and you're seeing the team form a little bit more. And about the halfway mark, the game really starts to get pretty serious, and this is where you start to understand all those little adventures that you went on before really make a difference, because you see that the princess has grown quite a bit. She's not that selfish little brat anymore, and she realized that her consequences have actions, her words have consequence, and so on and so forth. But it's bigger than that, and I don't want to ruin any storylines or anything like that, but I'll just say this, as a game that starts off very, like I said, kind of childish in a way, really picks up to being something much, much more, and I really actually enjoyed the story far more than I thought I would. Now, as far as combat, this one and the third one play the exact same, is very standard, basic, simple, turn-based RPG combat. There isn't even a lot of difficulty to it, so you don't really have to use a lot of tactics or anything like that, but you are afforded quite a large variety of skills and spells, namely through the puppets that you collect. You see, Karuru has the ability to talk to puppets and to even use them as kind of like an accessory or a weapon, where she gains access to their different spells and abilities, and all of them have different strengths and weaknesses. And for some reason, Kriya is also able to use the puppets, but those are the main 2 that are able to use puppets. Everyone else in your team, namely Randy and Sonia, they use regular weapons. There is one thing about the combat that does require a little bit of strategy, but it's very minimal. Aside from that, it's incredibly traditional and just standard. Rather basic, honestly. There's no chaining, there's really no nothing else. But the one thing that is a little bit interesting is when you use abilities, it will sometimes cost currency to do that. So if you run up against like just a random enemy, using an ability might actually cost you money in the end. When you're against like a boss or a bigger enemy, it's no big deal. They always pay out really big, so you can just use whatever skills that you want. But sometimes, like I said, it can actually kind of cost you money, but it's really just an afterthought. I never like ran out of money, or it never became a problem. It's just something I noticed while I was playing. Now, as far as visuals, they have said that it's upgraded, and I can't tell the difference because I've never played the original one, but it does look good and honestly very detailed, and I really do like the way that the whole world just kind of pops and it has its own life to it. When you go into different towns or you meet different people, and there is a ton of them and a ton of different NPCs to talk to, everyone seems to be different, and it really kind of harkens to just that retro feel of an old RPG, where so much of the world building just comes from talking to NPCs and kind of learning about different aspects of the towns that you're in or the situation you're in. You can always learn something or gain some sort of information from any of the townspeople or any of the NPCs. Also, I would say exploring is also something that, while this game is quite linear, you are given different paths and options that you can go on, and sometimes they will actually pay off for you, as there are, I'm not going to say hidden puppets, but there are puppets that are more difficult to get. This can definitely be well worth your while, as you can become OP pretty easy in this game. One of the stars of this game is also the sound, the music. There are many times when the characters will just kind of break out into a random song. That definitely has to do with the game, but it's really kind of funny. And you see this more with Rhapsody 3, but I don't love the music, to be honest, but I really respect the idea of doing that because it's kind of weird and kind of meta, but also it's kind of fun. It's kind of like a random musical just breaks out in your video game. And like I said, it's pretty cool. Like, I enjoy that aspect, that like lighthearted, random turn that it can take. But I will say, I don't love the music, but it definitely adds to the game and is its own character in so many ways, as it plays such an important role in the game. And just to be clear, that happens far more in Rhapsody 3 than it does Rhapsody 2. The music seems to be a little bit more important in Rhapsody 3, but we'll get to Rhapsody 3 here in a second. But I did want to say Rhapsody 2 comes in at about 10 to 15 hours. It's the same for Rhapsody 3 as well. The reason why I haven't really been covering Rhapsody 3 very much is because essentially the gameplay is pretty much the exact same. It's a very standard RPG, turn-based combat. Graphics look relatively the same. It still looks good, like I said, and performs really well. Although the main attraction with Rhapsody 3 is that you go back to playing Cornet. You're going through different times when you're trying to find the prince again. It's almost like different memories that weren't in the first game, and it kind of expands upon some other aspects that maybe weren't showcased enough, as you're going from the time of after you met the prince until almost present day or almost into Rhapsody 2. There's different stories throughout it, so it doesn't stay on one timeline too long, but it's easy enough to follow along, and it's kind of cool. I like the way they did that. Because I think where we can appreciate Princess Keruru and Kriya, sometimes you want to go back and play as one of the OGs, you know? You miss that character from before, and yeah, you see her grow, you see her become a queen and become a mom and all that stuff. But still, it is kind of nice to go back and re-experience some of her stories and her memories from just a different perspective after understanding what she becomes and how influential she becomes in this world. So I really did enjoy these games, and I think that as far as preservation and accessibility and all of that, NIS is doing a lot here. This world of Rhapsody is far bigger than I realized, and it's really cool that they're porting all of these over to modern day and giving us a chance to actually play them who've never been able to play these games that have been in Japan for, over the past 2 decades. But it is cool to be able to play these games and to almost have access to all of them. It would be nice if they put them in like a big bundle. I don't think they're done yet, but once they are, and to, make them a little bit cheaper. You see, both games in this collection came in at 30 hours collectively, and that's a rough estimate, but if you do most of the side quests and explore quite a bit, it'll be about 30 hours for both of them together. They're asking $50 for it, which is kind of pricey if you ask me, and a lot of these games fall in that range of like $49.99 for these collections, and not that I don't think they're worth it, but I do think that the price is a bit high, and I really wish that that's something that NIS would come down on. I have no idea what any of the numbers games look like, but I am sure that if they were set at around $29.99, these games would fly off the shelves. Now, with that being said, if you see a physical copy of this game or you're able to pick up a physical copy, buy it, because it seems like NIS games physically usually go up in value quite a bit. But I'm just saying, for the digital aspect, these are games that are 20 years plus old, and I'm guessing that many gamers haven't even heard of this series, or a lot of these where they're kind of hidden away and they've been in a different country, haven't even been accessible to us. So it's something that's, kind of been forgotten. So it would be nice if they were a little bit more accessible on the price. But honestly, that's the only thing that I have against these games, or this collection of games. Ultimately, I think that if you're a retro RPG fan, or you're an RPG fan in general, that this whole series is definitely worth jumping into. There is a lot here, and it's something that we don't want time to forget. We want to be able to embrace this series because, man, it's awesome. It's really good. It's so much better than I thought it was. I'll put it that way. Especially when it comes to story and narrative. There's some stuff, I don't want to ruin it for anyone, but for the time that they were being made, the messages that they were conveying, I don't know, it's just really impressive. And the whole world is actually much bigger than I thought it was. And these are just two games that add to that huge world that is Rhapsody. But for me, Rhapsody, Marl, Kingdom Chronicles would score about a 7 out of 10. Like I said, my two biggest issues are the value, and the combat is really simple. And when you think about also when they came out, we had already had games like many of the Final Fantasies out by then. They could have done a little bit more when it comes to that, just kind of complexity of combat. But I've really been enjoying this series and the spin-offs. I'm curious, have you guys been playing this, or are you interested in, playing all of them or one of them, or just, anything and everything? Do you remember them? Is this something that maybe I am the only one who forgot, and everyone's like, I can't believe you forgot about Rhapsody and how much we've been wanting it over here in the West? I'm curious, anything and everything down in the comment section below. Much appreciated. I love each and every one of you guys. You are all amazing. I truly, truly appreciate you. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.